Right, Littles and Jelly Spoons, before we get started, I've just got a quick apology to make. I did the VO for this video very late one night, and it wasn't until about 3/4 of the way through I realised I was saying the name of the extended edition of Metal Gear Solid 3 wrong. It should be Subsistence, and I keep referring to it as Substance. I think I do correct myself at some point, but you know, please don't at me in the comments.
What a thrill.
Ladles and Jelly Spoons, welcome back to Kai Matthews' YouTube channel and this month's retro review. Now today we're diving deep into the jungle for Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Released in 2004 on the trusty old PlayStation 2, this is a game where you eat snakes, wrestle with alligators and apparently sneak past baddies in a cardboard box. You know, just your typical Tuesday in the 60s. Ugh, the 60s. Back when cardboard were more efficient than modern military technology. You could put an entire army on alert just by hiding under a bit of corrugated packaging. Yeah, and to think I just used to use mine for packing up old VHS tapes. Anyway, Snake Eater was a game changer for the Metal Gear series. Pun intended. Stealth, survival and eating exotic wildlife. A true adventure. Speaking of wildlife, did you know that the European badger can dig a network of tunnels, known as sets, that can be over 100 metres long? Yes, that's quite impressive, isn't it? A bit like Snake in the jungle. I'd imagine, you know, popping up where you least expect him. Thanks for that, Keith. You're right, though, badgers might not have made it into Snake Eater, but, you know, let's not rule out the sequel, or indeed the remake. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, an action-adventure stealth game developed by Konami for the PlayStation 2. It first came out in late 2004 in North America and Japan, and then early 2005 in Europe and Australia. It is the 5th game in the Metal Gear series, written and directed by Hideo Kojima, and serves as a prequel to the whole series. An expanded edition called Metal Gear Solid 3 Substance was released in Japan in late 2005 and then in North America, Europe and Australia in 2006. A remastered version, Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater HD Edition, was part of the Metal Gear Solid HD collection for PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 and PlayStation Vita. In 2012, a reworked version, Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater 3D, came out for the Nintendo 3DS, and the HD edition was also included in Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 for the Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Windows and Xbox Series X and S in October of 2023. That same year, Konami announced a remake titled Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater, set to be released in 2024 for PlayStation 5, Windows and Xbox Series X and S. The game is set in 1964, 31 years before the events of the original Metal Gear. The story follows Fox operative Naked Snake as he tries to rescue a Russian rocket scientist named Nikolai Sokolov, sabotage a powerful new weapon and take down his former boss who has defected. Unlike previous games, which were mostly set in cities, Snake Eater takes place in the jungle in the Soviet Union during the 1960s. The high-tech gadgets of other Metal Gear Solid games are swapped out for a more wilderness-focused approach. The gameplay still emphasises stealth and sneaking around, and the game keeps its series' quirky humour and references to itself. The story is told mostly through cutscenes and radio conversations. Many consider Metal Gear Solid 3 to be one of the best video games ever made, don't you know? Ah, you know, so you're on it, Mr. B. No. It was a hit with critics and sold more than 4 million copies worldwide by March of 2010. The game was praised for its story, its lead character, its cutscenes and new gameplay elements. Their opinions on the camouflage system were more mixed, and some players had issues with the game's camera and frame rate.
We're surrounded. I see 4 of them.
Metal Gear Solid 3 is an absolute classic. Stealth, jungle survival and of course the joy of sneaking around in a cardboard box. But before we dive deep into the twists and turns and plot points that'll make your head spin, let's put up a big flashy spoiler warning, just in case there are some of you still stuck in the 1960s and haven't played it yet.
We've got company. It's the Ocelot unit. Let's get out of here. Hurry.
Yeah, nothing ruins a 20-year-old plot of a stealth game quite like spoilers. Next you'll be telling me that Snake uses a radio to chat to people. Shocking stuff. Perhaps the only thing more predictable than that is you sneaking in with a dry comment that Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater appears in the book 1001 Video Games You Must Play Before You Die by Tony Mott, the absolutely fantastic editor of Edge magazine. Excuse me, chaps, I think whilst we're warning the good ladles and jelly spoons, perhaps a quick tea spoiler is in order. You see, the longer you let your tea sit and steep, the stronger it gets. Let it sit too long and it's practically tar. Just a little heads up for anyone out there that's still struggling with their brewing times. Nobody asked Keith, right? And our lad has just done the unspeakable. I am the keeper of Tony's tome. Honestly, he gets 500 subscribers, thinks he can do as he likes. Right, anyway, it's time to look back at how Metal Gear Solid 3 came to be, because let me tell you, the development of this particular game was no simple walk in jungle. Snake Eater was originally meant to be developed for the PlayStation 3, but back in 2004 that console was about as real as the Loch Ness Monster, so they scaled it back to the trusty old PlayStation 2. Originally Snake Eater was planned to be developed for the PlayStation 3, but since the wait for the console was too long, the team decided to make it for the PlayStation 2 instead. From the beginning, director Hideo Kojima wanted to change the setting from the previous games. He said both the development team and the fans wanted a jungle environment. However, Kojima knew that working with elements like weather, landscape and wildlife would be challenging during development. Unlike earlier games where Snake often started near or inside the enemy base, Kojima wanted Snake Eater to feel more realistic, with Snake starting far from civilization and working his way towards the enemy. Kojima asked Yoji Shinkawa to design Naked Snake to look like Solid Snake, but with the personality of a rookie, acting more naive. Shinkawa didn't find it hard to design Naked Snake since essentially it's a younger version of Solid Snake in terms of appearance. One of the love scenes between Naked Snake and Eva were inspired by the movie The Pink Panther from 1963, although Kojima admitted it turned out differently from what they originally intended. Early trailers for the game didn't reveal that Naked Snake were indeed Big Boss, and Kojima often gave vague answers about his true identity. Interestingly, Kojima wanted Kurt Russell to voice Naked Snake because of the character's connection to Snake Plissken, a role that Russell had played in the 1981 movie Escape from New York. However, Russell declined, saying he wasn't interested in reprising roles or working on projects that didn't involve director John Carpenter. He confirmed this again in January of 2024, you know. Kojima mentioned that creating the outdoor environment for Snake Eater was a tough challenge. He explained that earlier games were mostly set indoors because the consoles at the time weren't strong enough to handle the realistic jungle setting. Unlike the flat surfaces in urban areas, the jungle in Snake Eater is full of uneven terrain like rock, dirt mounds and tree stumps. This meant they couldn't use the same collision engine from the previous games and had to build a new one from scratch. It was also tricky to make the motion capture work so Snake could walk smoothly over rough ground. Many fans wanted the game to have a 3D camera, but Kojima decided not to include it because he saw Metal Gear Solid, Sons of Liberty and Snake Eater as a trilogy, and he wanted to keep the same style of camera across all three games to maintain a consistent feel, even though 3D cameras were becoming more common. Kojima also wanted the boss battles in Snake Eater to feel unique compared to previous Metal Gear games and other titles. He said the fight with the sniper, The End, was a perfect example of the game's free and open style. The battle takes place in a large jungle where you have to track down The End, who hides and attacks you from a distance. The fight can go on for hours, which is different from most boss battles where the enemy is, right there in front of you. Interestingly though, you can avoid this fight entirely by killing The End earlier in the game, or by saving during the battle, waiting a week, or just adjusting the console's clock, returning to find that The End has died of old age. Kojima noted that this kind of feature is rare in other games. And there you have it, the development of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, a jungle full of technical challenges, cardboard box drama and somehow badgers. Oh, come on, badgers would fit right in. Sneaky, low to the ground, capable of digging tunnels, faster you can say shagger hod. Might even have made Snake's job a bit easier. Exactly! Badgers are highly organised, much like a good tea party. Everyone knows their role. No one gets out of line. Except that one badger, Barry. we don't talk about Barry. Speaking of staying in line, let's move on to how the game was made to how it actually plays. Because Snake Eater isn't just about sneaking around, there's a lot more to it than cardboard boxes and badger-free jungles. Yeah, because nothing says engaging gameplay like changing camouflage patterns every 5 minutes. I mean, I could barely decide what to wear this morning. Well, I mean, if you were crawling through the jungle trying to avoid enemy patrols, you'd probably care a little bit more about your wardrobe, or indeed when to eat that delicious snake that you've had in your backpack all this time, or when to brew a cuppa. I mean, imagine Snake in the middle of the jungle, pulls out a little tea set, stealth tea breaks. Now that's gameplay. Alright, ladles and jelly spoons, grab your camo and watch out for any hungry crocodiles. And don't forget to pack a snack, as we're about to break down gameplay of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. Let's see what makes this jungle trek so unforgettable. And remember, a good brew always helps in a crisis. Unless it's gone cold. Then you've got bigger problems. The gameplay in Snake Eater feels similar to previous Metal Gear Solid games. You control Snake as he sneaks through areas filled with enemies, trying to stay out of sight. Even though Snake can pick up a variety of weapons from handguns to rocket launchers, the main focus is on using stealth to avoid getting into fights. Along the way you'll find gadgets like motion detectors to help you track enemy movements, and the series' well-known cardboard box, which Snake can hide under to stay hidden. Whilst the basics are the same, Snake Eater does add some new features that weren't in earlier games. These include a camouflage system, a new close quarters combat CQC system for hand-to-hand fighting, a stamina meter, and a system where Snake can get injured and needs a bit of treatment. Most of the game takes place in an outdoor jungle in the Soviet Union, and figuring out how to use the environment is often key to staying unnoticed. A lot of focus is placed on blending into the surroundings, like climbing trees or hiding in tall grass to avoid the baddies. Unlike earlier games, there's no advanced radar here. Instead, you have a simple motion detector and a sonar system that fits the jungle setting much better.
I see you've got yourself a single-action army. That's right.
In Snake Eater, there's a camouflage index that shows how visible Snake is to enemies. This percentage ranges from negative values, meaning Snake is very noticeable, all the way up to 100%, meaning he's completely hidden. To stay out of sight, you'll need to change Snake's camouflage outfits and face paint depending on where you are. For instance, you might wear a barked pattern uniform when standing near a tree, or striped face paint when hiding in tall grass. There are also fun items like a fake Gavial head for water camouflage, or a monkey mask to throw off enemies. The hand-to-hand combat system from previous games has been improved and is now called the CQC system. When Snake is unarmed or using a one-handed weapon, it can grab baddies and put them in chokehold. From there you can choose different actions like knocking the baddie out, or throwing them down to the ground, slitting their throat, or even interrogating them to get some information. What you do depends on how you press the buttons and move the analog stick. Now, instead of the simple life bar like in earlier games, Snake Eater keeps track of specific injuries. For example, if Snake falls from a high place, he could break his leg, making him slower until you fix it with a splint and a bandage. If you don't treat these injuries, Snake won't fully recover his health for a while, you know. In Snake Eater, survival goes beyond just stealth and combat. You also have to rely on the environment for food. Snake's stamina gauge slowly decreases over time, and if you don't keep it up by eating, it can affect gameplay. For example, Snake might struggle to aim properly, or his loud stomach growls could alert enemies. You can collect food and store it in your backpack, but some of it can spoil over time. Eating spoiled food can give Snake a stomachache, which makes his stamina drain even faster. Now, PlayStation 2 version of Snake Eater also included a fun minigame called Snake vs Monkey, where Snake had to catch monkeys like in Ape Escape. This mini game is full of humour, and as you complete different levels you can unlock bonus items that can be used in main game. Crawling through the mud, chomping on frogs and sneaking in the world's most fashionable camouflage, you've got yourself some classic Snake Eater gameplay. But that's really just scratching the surface. The real meat of this game? The plot. Oh, the plot. Because when you're not wrestling crocodiles or deciding which frog looks tastiest, what you really want is 40 minutes worth of cutscenes about Cold War politics. Nothing says fun like a good nuclear deterrent. Who needs a 5-minute snack break when you can have 5 minutes of Snake philosophizing in the jungle? But seriously though, Metal Gear Solid 3's plot is a wild ride. Betrayal, secret missions, the heartbreak of having to fight your own mentor. It's like a soap opera, but with more cardboard boxes. A soap opera, you'll say? Sounds like one of those drama-filled afternoons where everyone's got a hidden agenda. Rather like Barry the Badger stealing from the biscuit tin. tin. Yes, Keith, exactly like Barry the Badger, except replace biscuits with nuclear warheads and tea with international espionage.
In 1964, CIA agent Naked Snake is sent to the Soviet Union to rescue a weapons scientist named Sokolov. Sokolov had defected to the US but was forced to return to the USSR, where he's working on a secret project, a nuclear-equipped tank called the Shagohod. Snake is supported by Major Zero, medical advisor Paramedic, and his former mentor, the Boss. When Snake finds Sokolov, his mission falls apart as the Boss appears and announces her defection to the Soviet Union. She and her unit, the Cobras, take Sokolov, and the Boss defeats Snake, leaving him badly injured. Colonel Volgin, a Soviet officer, steals the Shagohod and sets off a nuclear explosion to cover it up, making it look like the US was responsible. Snake is rescued just in time. The Soviet Union accuses the US of the nuclear attack, pushing the two nations to the brink of war. Soviet Premier Khrushchev contacts US President Lyndon B. Johnson, allowing the US to prove their innocence. Snake is sent back to stop Volgin, destroy the Shagohod, and eliminate the Boss. In the Soviet wilderness, Snake is supposed to meet an NSA agent named Adam, but instead encounters EVA, another agent who assists him. She guides him to a lab where Sokolov is being held. On his journey, Snake faces several members of the Boss's Cobra unit and defeats them, including the Pain, the Fear, the End, and the Fury. In the lab, Snake meets Granin, a scientist whose project for a two-legged tank was rejected in favor of the Shagohod. Granin tells Snake that Sokolov and the Shagohod are located at Grozny Grad, a heavily fortified military base. Snake makes it to the base, finds Sokolov, but is captured by Volgin, who kills Sokolov and tortures Snake. Snake loses an eye during the interrogation but manages to escape. Snake returns to the base to destroy the Shagohod, but is confronted by Volgin, the Boss, and Ocelot, who uncovers Evia's true identity as a spy. Volgin explains that he has inherited the Philosopher's Legacy, a secret $100 billion fund created during World War II by leaders from the US, Soviet Union, and China. After the war, the group dissolved, and the money was hidden around the world. Both the US and the KGB are trying to recover it. Snake defeats Volgin and disables the Shagohod. He and EVA escape, but are stopped by the Boss, whom Snake is forced to kill in an emotional final battle. Before dying, the Boss gives Snake a microfilm containing the Philosopher's Legacy. Snake and EVA flee to Alaska, but EVA disappears, leaving a tape revealing that she is a Chinese spy sent to steal the legacy. She also reveals that the Boss never defected but was on a secret mission to recover the legacy for the US, sacrificing herself to prove America's innocence. In the end, Snake is awarded the title of Big Boss, but is left emotionally broken by the Boss's death. Meanwhile, Ocelot reveals that he is Adam and has secretly secured half of the Philosopher's Legacy for the US.
If you have enjoyed this trip down memory lane with us and Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up. Now, I mean, you've listened to us ramble on about cardboard boxes, jungle camo and questionable food choices. You might as well hit the like button. I mean, we've earned it, right? And don't forget to share this video with your chums. After all, they deserve to know the finer points of sneaking through the jungle and having a proper tea break. It's only polite. And if you're enjoying this video and what we do here, why not subscribe if you're not already? Hit the old subscribe button for more retro reviews, laughs and probably more Badger facts from Keith. Because really, I mean, who wouldn't want more Badger trivia in their life? Plus, you don't want to miss the next bit. I mean, we're about to dive into voice casting music as Snake Eater. Trust me, it's worth sticking around for. And I hear there's no better way to enjoy the soundtrack than with a good brew. Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater brought together a star-studded voice cast that truly brought the characters to life. Let's dive into the talented actors behind the game's iconic roles. As Naked Snake, we have David Hayter, a Canadian-American actor and screenwriter who returns as the voice of Naked Snake. Best known for voicing both Solid Snake and Naked Snake in the Metal Gear series, Hayter is also a screenwriter, having penned films like X-Men and Watchmen. His deep, gravelly voice gives Snake its signature sound and has been a fan favourite for years. Fun fact, he also voiced King Shark on The Flash. Neil Ross, a British-born actor known for his distinctive transatlantic accent, voices Colonel Volgin. Ross has lent his voice to a variety of American cartoons like G.I. Joe and Transformers, as well as films like Back to the Future Part 2 and Babe. He's also been an announcer for major award shows like the Oscars and the Emmys. Laurie Allen, a familiar voice in animation, brings the boss to life. You might know her as Pearl Krabs from SpongeBob SquarePants or Diane Simmons from Family Guy. In Snake Eater, her performance as the boss, a complex mentor figure, adds a deep emotional layer to the game. The voice of Tatiana and Eva, the mysterious and captivating double agent, was provided by an actress using a pseudonym, Suzette Minette. Her true identity remains a secret, leading to much fan speculation. Even Hayter has confirmed that it was an alias, and while some suspect Debbie Mae West, West denies it, leaving Minette's true identity a mystery. Jim Piddock voices Major Zero, the commanding officer guiding Snake through his mission. Piddock is an English actor who appears in films like Lethal Weapon 2, Austin Powers in Goldmember and Best in Show. His calm, authoritarian tones give Major Zero his steady presence throughout the game. Heather Hawley voices Paramedic, Snake's medical support during the mission. Hawley has worked as an announcer for various award shows and is well known for her role in the Metal Gear series. Her character's quirky knowledge of films and medical trivia adds some fun banter to the game. James C. Mathis III provides the voice of Signet, the weapons expert and tech support for Snake. Mathis is also known for voicing Black Panther in various media. His quick wit and helpful insight made Signet a fan favourite. Josh Keaton voices the young and brash Major Ocelot. Keaton has had numerous voice roles, including Spider-Man and Ryu Hayabusa in Ninja Gaiden. His portrayal of Ocelot, a recurring character in the series, showed off a more youthful and ambitious side of the future antagonist. Gregory Allen Berger, known for his work as Grimlock in the Transformers and Jecht in Final Fantasy X, voices the Pain, a member of the Cobra unit with the ability to control Hornets. Berger's deep voice added to the Pain's menacing presence, don't you know? Michael Bell, whose voice acting credits include Transformers and G.I. Joe, voices the Fear, another member of the Cobra unit. Bell's distinctive voice gave the Fear his unsettling, snake-like personality. John Grant Albrecht voices the End, the ancient sniper in Snake Eater. Albrecht has appeared in numerous TV shows and films, including SWAT and Malcolm in Middle. His portrayal at End gave the character a wise, almost mythical quality. Richard Doyle voices the Fury, the Cobra unit's flamethrower-wielding soldier. Doyle has a long history of acting, including stage performances and voice roles on TV shows. His booming voice helped make the Fury a formidable opponent. And finally, Dave Allen Thomas Jr., also known as just Dave Thomas, voices the Sorrow, the ghostly figure Snake encounters during the game. Thomas, a voice actor and painter, brings a haunting, melancholic tone to the character, making the Sorrow one of the most memorable parts of Snake Eater. This incredible voice cast helped bring the world of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater to life, making each character unforgettable in their own way. From the commanding presence of Snake to the enigmatic allure of Eva, these talented actors shaped the game into a true classic. The music for Snake Eater was composed by Harry Gregson Williams and Noriko Hibino, who worked on both the cutscenes and the gameplay. Hibino also wrote the game's main theme, Snake Eater, which has a real James Bond style vibe.
What a thrill, with darkness and silence through the night. What a thrill, I'm searching and I'll melt into you. What a
The song, performed by Cynthia Harrell, plays during the opening and throughout parts of the game. Another track, called Don't Be Afraid, written by Rika Muranaka and performed by Eliza Fiorillo, is featured at the end of the game. One of the ending themes in Snake Eater were different from the usual in-house music. It were Where to Fall by Starsailor. Hideo Kojima shared on his blog that he wanted to use David Bowie's Space Odyssey and Ashes to Ashes as the ending themes because of the game's focus on space development. However, as game evolved, that theme became less important, and a colleague suggested he listen to a band called Stellar Star, but Kojima misheard it as Star Sailor, and he ended up liking Way to Fall and choosing that for game's ending.
Open your heart and smile for me. You're not the only one afraid to fall in love. Dance with me again and walk this way. Don't be afraid.
There you have it, the brilliant voice acting and that iconic Snake Eater theme. I mean, it is basically just James Bond, but with more reptiles. Of course, because, you know, nothing says epic like singing about eating snakes whilst crawling through mud. I mean, I bet they really had a whole back on menu of musical options. Now, I do appreciate a good tune, but they really missed a trick. They should have thrown in a little ode to tea, perhaps. After all, nothing calms the nerves before a boss fight like a good brew. Tea breaks in the jungle, Kojima's next innovation, right there. But seriously, between the fantastic voice cast and the memorable music, it all came together to set the mood for Snake Eater. But real question is, did anyone else think so? I mean, did they appreciate Snake eating his way through food chain? Or was it just us? Well, Pat, it's funny you should ask, because now we're going to jump in to see how Metal Gear Solid 3 was received. Spoiler alert, it wasn't just Snake's appetite that impressed people. I see, we're moving on from the reception of Snake's meals to the reception of the game itself. That sounds fair. I imagine the critics didn't mind the odd snack as long as the gameplay wasn't too undercooked. Remember, a cup of tea pairs well with any review, except lukewarm ones. Snake Eater was a commercial hit, selling 2.38 million copies in Asia and America by December of 2004, and 3.6 million globally by August of 2005. Whilst this was less than Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, which sold 7 million copies, Snake Eater's sales grew to over 3.7 million by September of 2005, and more than 4 million by March of 2010. In Japan, the extended edition, Substance, sold 333,339 copies, and Snake Eater 3D sold 79,284 copies. The game received widespread praise with universal acclaim according to Metacritic. IGN gave it a score of 9.6 out of 10, Edge rated it 8 out of 10, and GameSpot awarded it 8.7 out of 10, calling it richly cinematic and a great achievement. GameSpy declared it probably the best Metal Gear Solid game yet, and Eurogamer considered it overwhelmingly superior to Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. Critics were happy with the new lead character Naked Snake, who looked a lot like Solid Snake, especially after the mixed response to Raiden in Metal Gear Solid 2. Some reviewers, who felt the long dialogue and complex plot twists in Sons of Liberty hurt the experience, appreciated Snake Eater for feeling more like the original Metal Gear Solid, with less of the philosophical talk that some found unnecessary. Opinions on the camouflage system were mixed. Edge found it exciting, saying that lying camouflaged in short grass just inches away from an enemy is a gripping twist on stealth, while GameSpy thought that it was just a number to keep track of and not very engaging. GameSpot called it the most important and best implemented of the game's new features. However, the game's frame rate, reduced to 30 frames per second compared to Sons of Liberty's 60 frames per second, was criticised by some. Now, the cutscenes were praised for being visually exciting and beautifully shot according to Edge, but in the same review they criticised the script, calling it awkward at times, and David Hayter's performance as Snake, stating that the game's dialogue didn't meet the standards of other games or films. GameSpot mentioned that some of the humour didn't always land, and it felt like something got lost in translation from Japanese, which might appeal to hardcore fans but sometimes broke the immersion. You know, Keith, Snake Eater had this whole camo system, but right, get this, Konami ran a contest where people could send in their ideas for custom camo, and the winner had their designs put in game. Ah, so they let the public decide what Snake should wear in the jungle. Brave decision. I imagine someone suggested a tartan pattern, perfect for blending in with a Scottish picnic. Probably not, although I bet there were a few designs that were, less than tactical. I mean, could you imagine Snake sneaking around in bright neon polka dots? Polka dots? Oh, well, now that's a fashion statement right there. He could have maybe distracted the guards with his dazzling sense of style. Look, that man over there, he's wearing paisley. Nothing screams stealth like looking like a walking rug. But hey, there's more. If you had a copy of Metal Gear Solid 2, you could unlock a special face paint. Maybe Snake just wanted to match his wardrobes. Special face paint, you say? Perhaps ones that make him blend in at a fancy dinner party? All the best secret agents are prepared for a black tie affair after all. Keith, Snake in a tuxedo sneaking through jungle, just hoping that the enemy doesn't spot his bow tie. Very tactical. Exactly. If you're going to infiltrate enemy lines, might as well look dapper whilst doing it. Whether it be polka dots or dinner party chic, I guess Konami really let the players get creative with the camo contest. Who knew survival could be so, fashionable? Metal Gear Solid 3 Substance was an expanded version of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater, following the tradition of expanded versions of the Metal Gear series. Substance offered new content and features rather than extra single-player missions. One of the standout additions was the inclusion of the original Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake, with the latter being officially localized for the first time. Another major feature was Metal Gear Online, a multiplayer mode, and the addition of a fully user-controlled 3D camera for the main game. Due to the extensive content, Substance was split across 2 discs. The first disc contained the main game and cutscene viewer, whilst the second disc featured online multiplayer mode and various extras. Metal Gear Online allowed up to 8 players to compete in different game modes, such as Deathmatch and Capture the Flag, using characters, items and stages from Snake Eater. Players could also use secret characters from the game Rumble Roses, depending on their performance. Although the online service for Substance was discontinued in 2007, fans later revived it through emulated servers. Aside from online multiplayer, Substance also included a variety of other features previously exclusive to the Japanese and European versions of Snake Eater. This included new camouflage designs, extra Snake vs Monkey stages, and the European extreme difficulty level. The game also featured parody cutscenes and trailers, and it offered connectivity with Metal Gear Acid 2. Additionally, the Japanese version provided access to a hidden website that allowed players to download a clock program featuring Otacon, a recurring character in the series. The limited edition version of Substance included a third disc called Existence, which edited the game's cutscenes into a 3.5-hour movie with enhanced sound and additional scenes. In North America, this edition was only available to players who pre-ordered the game, but in Europe the 3-disc version became the standard release due to the delayed launch. As a special bonus, North American pre-orders of Substance included a documentary DVD titled Metal Gear Saga Volume 1. This DVD features a 5-part mini-documentary about Metal Gear and an interview with Hideo Kojima, as well as trailers for other games in the franchise. Subsistence, which I have just realised I've been saying wrong this entire review, received high praise from critics with an average score of 94% on Metacritic. Reviewers appreciated the addition of a 3D camera, which made the gameplay feel more natural and less restrictive. The online mode was also impressive for a PlayStation 2 game, though some critics felt that Snake Eater's distinctive gameplay didn't fully adapt to online multiplayer. Despite this, Subsistence won IGN's award for Best Online Game on the PlayStation 2 in 2006. Right, Keith, here's a good one for you. Did you know that after Metal Gear Solid 2, Hideo Kojima, the director, he didn't want to direct Snake Eater. He thought he'd hand it off to one of his team at Konami. Didn't want to direct, you say? My God, that's like me refusing to make the tea. Eventually someone has to step up. But apparently nobody wants to.
Tio.
Not you. And not a single person wanted the job, so poor Kojima had to direct it himself. After all, can you imagine a bunch of grown men sitting around going, no sir, after no sir, after you, no sir, after you. Like a bad round of musical chairs, except instead of sitting, they were dodging jungle scenes and plot twists. Speaking of jungle scenes, the composer Henry Gregson Williams jokingly said he'd only come back to do music game if it was set in Amazon. The old Amazon or nothing gambit. Yes, that's quite a specific request. Right, well here's the twist. You see, Kojima was actually planning on setting it in jungle, so he went along with it and told Gregson Williams that his comments inspired the entire setting. So the composer thought his jokes actually set the scene for the whole game. That's brilliant. It's like telling someone you've started a revolution because they suggested changing the biscuits at tea time. Kojima didn't even tell him truth until the music were almost finished. Must have been quite the shock when Gregson Williams found out. I've got to imagine that conversation. Oh, by the way, remember how you said your joke inspired the setting? Well, not quite. It's a good reminder to be careful what you joke about around Hideo Kojima, because if you're not careful, he'll end up setting his new game in Dog and Duck. Duly noted, Pat. Who do you want to play you? I mean, I was thinking Sean Bean for me. Come on, Sean. Do it for Yorkshire! Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater HD Edition was released for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 in late 2011, and it came as part of the Metal Gear Solid HD collection that was also available as a digital download on the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live Arcade. This version of the game was upgraded to run at 720p resolution and aimed for a smoother frame rate of 60 frames per second compared to the original PlayStation 2's version of 30 frames per second. The aspect ratio was also expanded from the original 4:3 to a wider 16:9, giving players a better view of the game world. The HD edition included some of the content from the Subsistence version, like the third-person camera and demo theatre, but it didn't include the online multiplayer mode or Snake vs Monkey minigame that were released on Xbox 360 after all. The original Metal Gear games were still part of this edition and they're accessible from main menu. In 2012, a version of the Metal Gear Solid HD collection was released for the PlayStation Vita, don't you know, which featured both Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3. Now, the Vita version included some touch controls to make use of the device's touchscreen, and whilst frame rate was capped at 30 frames per second, it was more stable than the PlayStation 2 version, I'll have you know, and the game also experienced less screen tearing. Now, Keith, you'll appreciate this. The PAL version of Metal Gear Solid 3 got some exclusive content that the US and Japanese version didn't. Must be nice being European. Well, you know, we've always been known for our refinement. Perhaps they thought we needed a bit of extra culture in our jungle crawling. Because you know, nothing says refinement quite like battling through boss fights in duel mode. It's like saying, let's skip the small talk and get straight to punching. The true British approach. None of this sneaking around nonsense. Straight to the point, I say. Although I imagine a good brew beforehand might still be in order. And after you're done fighting bosses, you've got demo theatre, where you can watch all cutscenes back to back. So if you missed any of those long-winded speeches, here's your chance. Yeah, nothing like a bit of afternoon cinema. Yeah, watching Snake chat to everyone in the jungle. It's practically Shakespeare. You know, if Shakespeare were obsessed with nuclear weapons and cardboard boxes. Exactly. And for those of you who think you're too good for regular difficulty, there's European Extreme mode, because clearly if you're not suffering while sneaking, you're doing it wrong. Extreme sneaking? Sounds a bit like trying to get the last biscuit without anybody noticing. High stakes indeed. Speaking of biscuits, they even threw 2 new levels in Snake vs Monkey mode, because clearly we needed more chaos with primates. Monkeys and snakes, it's a natural rivalry, although I still think Snake would have had an easier time if he'd just offered the monkeys a nice brew. Works wonders in tense situations. And if that don't calm them down, you can always throw on some new face paint and camouflage designs exclusive to the PAL version, because you know, looking good while sneaking is half the battle. Fashion and function, Pat. I mean, if you're gonna face off against monkeys and nuclear weapons, you might as well, you know, do it in style. At E3 2010, Konami showcased a demo for the Nintendo 3DS called Metal Gear Solid 3D Snake Eater, the naked sample. The demo was just meant to test the 3DS's hardware, with no initial plans for a full game. However, later that year, Konami announced they would develop a full Metal Gear title for the 3DS. The game was revealed as Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater 3D and was released in 2012. The 3DS version introduced new controls to work with system's touchscreen, which received some criticism. However, the Circle Pad Pro accessory improved controls by adding a second analog stick and extra buttons, making the game feel closer to other versions of Metal Gear. New gameplay features included an over-the-shoulder third-person view, crouch walking, and a gyroscope function for balancing when crossing bridges or standing on branches. The game also allowed players to use 3DS camera to create custom camouflage patterns. Graphically, Snake Eater 3D had several improvements like better character models and textures, but the frame rate was just so low when compared to other versions. And despite some criticism, the game received generally positive reviews with an average score of 78% on Metacritic. Okay, so let me tell you something. Now, in Snake Eater, one of the characters goes by the codename Major Tom. This is a nod to the David Bowie song Space Oddity. I mean, one of the characters even says, "Can you hear me, Major Tom?" That's a line straight out of the song. Oh, well, I see. He's not an actual astronaut. He's just borrowing the name. Always wondered what Bowie's Major Tom was doing in the jungle. Well, you know, Major Tom in the game later says he didn't actually name himself after the Bowie song. He picked it from the movie The Great Escape. You know, one of the tunnels. They named the tunnels Tom, Dick and Harry. It's a classic film, isn't it? So he thought Tom was the escape tunnel. Nice, he turns out he were wrong, and the tunnel named Tom was actually found by Nazis, but instead of switching to using the name Major Harry, he just shrugs it off and uses the code name Major Zero. Well, yeah, Major Harry would have been a bit of an odd choice, don't you think? I mean, people might have started expecting royal duties instead of secret missions. See, that's just one of the many little nods in the game. I mean, there's a bit where Snake meets a guy called Director Garin, and in his office he's got a bunch of Metal Gear models on display, like Rex from the first Metal Gear Solid and Ray from Sons of Liberty. Yeah, man with a hobby. Always good to have a collection. I assume it's the equivalent of me keeping a shelf full of different teapots. You are all my children. Now, Garin even has a photo of himself and a friend who turns out to be the grandfather of Al Emmerich, the guy who built Metal Gear Rex. Keeping it in the family, much like the art of tea brewing, handed down through the generations. What's he still doing here? And of course, speaking of funny moments, in the minigame Snake vs Monkey, Snake actually asks if they can get Gabe or Sam to handle this instead of himself. Who are they then? Oh, it's just a cheeky little jab at Gabe Logan from the Siphon Filter series and Sam Fisher from the Splinter Cell series. Basically, Snake is suggesting they get other well-known stealth heroes to do the job. It sounds like he's trying to offload some work, but I can't say I blame him. If I had the choice between stealth missions and a quiet afternoon tea, I'd call Gabe and Sam myself. I wonder if that N-Gage lad is still around. And there's even a part where they start chatting about James Bond movies in the game. Major Tom gets all excited and starts suggesting gadgets for Snake, like his Q from Russia with Love. Nothing beats a good Bond gadget. I wonder if they'd ever consider a teapot with a built-in grenade launcher. Perfect for those tense afternoon teas. Tea and explosions, it's all about balance. Can't really help feeling that probably should have been one of your lines. In 2023, an updated version of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater was released for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, Nintendo Switch and Steam. This version drops the HD edition label from its title, but includes a digital screenplay book and a digital master book. On the Nintendo Switch, the game runs at 720p at 30 frames per second in handheld mode and 1080p at 30 frames per second in TV mode, whilst on other platforms it runs at 1080p at 60 frames per second. A full remake of Metal Gear Solid 3 is currently in development, titled Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater. The remake were announced during the May 2023 PlayStation Showcase and is being developed by Konami. It's planned for release on the PlayStation 5, Windows and Xbox Series X and S. A novel adaptation of Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater was written by Satoshi Hayes and published by Kadokawa Shoten in Japan in 2005. 2014. And finally, Konami subsidiary KPE released a pachinko version of Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater in Japan. The machine was called Big Boss and it featured a 32-inch HD LCD screen up front and includes scenes from the game which have been redone with improved CGI to really showcase the machine's capabilities. It was distributed to parlours across Japan in 2016.
Well, I guess it might at least make a nice distraction.
That's the spirit, Snake. Have a little fun.
If you stick to the main objectives, you can finish this game in about 16 hours. 16 hours? You madman, that's like 2 full days of watching Weather Channel, or 1 afternoon of trying to understand Snake's life decisions. 16 hours, that's just the right amount of time to brew the perfect pot of tea, I'd say. Although, you know, if I was sneaking around, I think I'd need a break every now and then. You can't rush these things. And here's the kicker, lads. If you want to see everything, and I mean everything that this game has to offer, you're looking at a good 24.5 hours for 100% completion. 24.5 hours. What's the extra time for? Is Snake trying on every camouflage pattern? Oh, should I go with the bark or the leaves today? Well, you know, or perhaps he's having a little sit down between missions for, you know, for a proper tea break. I mean, you can't rush greatness or indeed a good brew. Well, I mean exactly. I mean, maybe Snake's having a tough time deciding which frog to eat, but yeah, you know, to get everything, and I mean everything, you've got to explore every single nook and cranny, find every collectible, and try every single bit of camouflage. I mean, it's like a treasure hunt, but with less treasure and more survival. Oh yes, of course, because that's the one thing that improves survival in a jungle filled with baddies, isn't it? The obsessive need to collect every random item. I mean, I can just picture it now. Snake pausing mid-mission. Oh, hold up, Colonel. I cannot blow up this base full of baddies. I've missed a dog tag somewhere. And don't forget, you know, Badger wouldn't leave a stone unturned in its set either. I imagine Snake's just doing what nature intended. I mean, if Benji could play, he'd be aiming for that 100%. It's one of those games where you can really take your time with it, enjoy the detail, and really, you know, just get lost in it. Or you can be like Pat and just stick to the missions and get out in 16 hours. Get in, get out, get down dog and duck. That's my motto. I can't be wasting time hunting down dog tags while there's parts of best to be drunk. Well, I think Snake deserves a nice brew after all that sneaking about. Yeah, whether it's 16 or 24 hours. Tea and biscuits. Now that's a reward worth completing any mission for. Or a flaming sambuca. But who said that? Yeah, who? Whether you're into breezing through in 16 hours or really taking your time for that 100%, stick around for more retro fun, Badger facts, and of course tea tips. I mean, we've barely scratched the surface of this game's depth and impact. I'm sure that's very hard to believe, given how long this video has ended up being. Oh, sorry, or as I meant to say, because it's written in scripts. Just bear with me a second, hang on. Or the surface of that cardboard box. Honestly, who knew paper products could be so tactical? Can I go to a pub yet? If you enjoyed this trip back to 2004 and you've got a soft spot for cardboard boxes and jungle survival, don't forget to like this video, share it out with your chums, and of course subscribe to the channel. We've got more retro reviews, retro roundups, Friday facts, and yes, even more Badger facts coming your way. Now, in case you missed it, we recently hit 500 subscribers here on YouTube and on all Instagram as well. So December is our 500 subscriber month of specials. If you have any questions for any of us here at the Orbital Broadcast Bunker, please do pop them in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and before we go, I'll leave you with this. Is there another word for synonym? Cheerio. See you soon.